Just over a month to go for the union budget, the economy is attempting to get back on track and expectations are running high, especially after Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman promised a budget like never before. This was in her interaction with industry leaders a few days ago. One key number that will be watched is the fiscal deficit. Government sources say the estimate for the fiscal deficit will be around 8%, and that is in line with what the rating agencies and State Bank of India have predicted. It's better than Nomura's projection. Fitch has an estimate of 7.8%, and this will also mean that the government will need to amend the FRBM Act. Sapna Das, who broke that story, joins us now with more. Sapna, fiscal deficit projection of close to 8%, that's the estimate that the government seems to be working with?
Well, a fiscal deficit number closer to 8% by March end is not ruled out, primarily on count of the massive revenue gap that the government is experiencing, and of course the massive stimulus measures that have been announced by the government on both counts. What has basically also happened is that the overall receipts position is looking very challenging despite the improvement in tax revenues. And to quite an extent, even the non-tax revenues have a major role to play over here. This is not just the disinvestment receipt that we're talking about, but other non-tax revenues also, which the government had factored in at the time of the budget making. So there is a massive gap on that front as well. So overall, the receipt situation is looking very challenging, despite the fact that, with the growth prospects moving up, your tax revenues have also improved considerably, and they will improve further in the last quarter of the financial year. So net, it may just be feasible that an 8% fiscal deficit target is what may be likely by March end. Apart from this, let's also keep in mind, apart from the stimulus measures, the government has not really stepped back on spending. So in the current financial year, the actual expenditure is going to be more than what was estimated in the budget. So that is another factor that we need to keep in mind. This leads us probably to the question as to what happens to the FRBM law, which has a certain mandate which the government has to follow every year. Possibly looking at big deficit numbers due to COVID in the current financial year, it may just be possible that a review would be up in terms of the FRBM targets and the kind of roadmap that it envisages. Only issue here is that whether the government will take that call at the time of the budget, that is something that we have to wait and watch for.
All right, Sapna, many thanks for joining us. Here's an important development for the auto sector. The Ministry of Road Transport and Highways has now shared a formal proposal to make dual front airbags mandatory for all cars. The government wants to implement this starting the 1st of April. Industry players tell us that they will be compelled to hike prices after the addition of this feature. Parikshit joins us now with more. Parikshit, this was anticipated now. The draft has formally been put out by the ministry. What kind of timelines are we talking about, and what's the reaction from industry? What price hikes are anticipated?
Well, the Ministry of Road Transport had been consulting the auto industry on this for the last 1 year, and the message that was going out was that this is something that will have to be done. Now, according to this draft, if it becomes a reality, if it becomes a rule, then all OEMs will have to make sure that they provide dual front airbags in new models by the 1st of April 2021 and in existing models by the 1st of June 2021. So according to many OEMs, this is a very short deadline. What they're saying is that technically there will be no problem because many of them were already providing dual front airbags in some models. So they don't need to go for another process of testing. But yes, this will bring about a realignment of production plans and supply chains as well. The concern right now is, in a short period, how will you get that additional requirement of airbags from? This is something that could create pressure on production and the industry as well. On the price issue specifically, we're already looking at a price increase in January due to high steel prices and commodity costs, and there could be a further increase due to the front passenger seat airbag by about 5,000 to 8,000. This, according to the Federation of Automobile Dealers and Car Manufacturers, could hurt the customer, especially the ones going in for lower-end models.
All right, Parikshit, many thanks for joining us. The draft proposal there to make airbags mandatory for all cars starting the 1st of April. Up next at 7 p.m, you can catch a special conversation with Rajiv Bajaj of Bajaj Auto and M&M's Pavan Goenka on the production-linked incentive scheme proposed by the government for the auto sector. Can it help India create global-sized auto companies? Tune in at 7 p.m. for that exclusive. Well, on to the other big story. The ongoing farmers' protest in Punjab has taken an untoward turn, with protesters allegedly damaging telecom towers in the state. The Telecom Tower Association says that protesters are forcefully shutting down telecom towers and threatening employees at tower sites. Sources tell us that 1,500 geo towers have been damaged or have been forced to shut down. The state government has urged the Director General of Police to ensure protection at tower sites. Ashmit Kumar, who's been tracking that story, joins us now with more. Ashmit, we now have the government of Punjab actually writing to the DGP saying that tower sites must be protected. Take us through what the plan is and what has been the impact of the forced shutdown.
Well, concern for Jio as far as hinterland of Punjab is concerned, rural Punjab presenting a concern, instances of forceful shutdown, instances of damage to equipment, equipment being stolen, harassment of staff. These are the issues that Jio is dealing with at the ground level. And what's important is that finally there seems to be some relief coming in from the government. A formal letter has been dispatched from the government to the DGP of Punjab to ensure with clear instructions that the police and the law enforcement agencies are required to ensure that these tower assets of the telecom companies are protected against forceful shutdown and against damages. That was, of course, on 24th. The letter was written on 24th. Subsequently, yesterday, we also had a very clear statement being issued by the Chief Minister himself, Captain Amrinder Singh, making it clear that the law enforcement agencies are required to act against those who are vandalizing these tower assets. Now, what is the context? Now, in light of these farmer protests, Jio towers in Punjab, which are in north of 9,000 towers, are being targeted. In fact, we're given to understand that 1,500 of them were made to be non-operational on account of damage, stealing of equipment, or forceful shutdowns. And it is only after that, after some intervention by Jio, that we believe 400 of those 1,500 have been brought back online. There is still an effort to bring the others back online. But there are reports that continue coming in from rural Punjab, which indicate that there are further instances of such actions of forceful shutdown, of damages, of harassment of staff. Now, what we understand is that Jio is in touch with local law enforcement agencies. The hope that Jio has is that this action by the state government will help address this issue and will address this issue of damages as well as forceful shutdown. But that, of course, is what Jio is anticipating. For now, the ball is in the court of the law enforcement agencies and the state governments to come through on their assurance and their promise of protecting these tower assets. Back to you.
Yes, as you pointed out, Ashmit, this is something that has been raised by Chief Minister Amrinder Singh himself last night. Thanks very much for joining us. Meanwhile, the deadlock over the contentious farm laws continues for the 34th day. The government has called unions for another round of talks. In Bihar, farmers have marched to the governor's house in Patna demanding that farm laws be scrapped. But on to another CNBC TV 18 exclusive. We've learned that HDFC Bank's board has shortlisted a candidate to take over the top job as the chairperson of the bank, with the position set to fall vacant in a few days from now. Ritu Singh joins us now with the details on that. Ritu, who has the board of HDFC Bank selected?
In what is a very keenly tracked transition in the Indian banking space, we are given to understand that former Economic Affairs Secretary Atanu Chakravarti is tipped to take over as the next chairman of HDFC Bank. Remember, this is especially important coming at a time when HDFC Bank has undergone a leadership transition, with its longtime CEO Aditya Puri retiring in April and being succeeded by Shashidhar Jagdishan. The top post of the chairman is set to fall vacant on the 1st of January 2021, which is when the current chairperson Shamala Gopinath is set to retire. Therefore, in a meeting held yesterday, the board of HDFC Bank approved Atanu Chakravarti's name as the part-time chairperson of the bank and has sent this to the Reserve Bank of India for its final approval. Now, RBI approval is going to be key for this appointment, but we're given to understand that the bank does not see any hurdle in this. In fact, it has been unofficially given the comfort that the name could likely be approved, which is why the name has been shortlisted and sent to the Reserve Bank of India for the final nod. Now, Atanu Chakravarti last served as the Economic Affairs Secretary up until April of this year, and therefore he may have a one-year cooling off period, after which he will be able to join the board of HDFC Bank. He's also served as the Secretary of Divestment and held various important positions in the Ministry of Finance. We reached out to him for a comment as well, but he declined to comment on this story.
All right, Ritu, many thanks for joining us. That's CNBC TV 18 exclusive. Some of the other headlines tonight. The bull run on Dalal Street continues. The Sensex and the Nifty post record closing highs for the 14th time this month, gaining 0.5% each. Financials lift the market with HDFC, HDFC Bank and ICICI Bank being the top contributors. ENAM is likely to back out of the deal with Oaktree for DHFL's insurance business takeover. Sources say Oaktree is in talks with 3 other funds for the takeover. Oaktree tells CNBC TV 18 that the information is inaccurate and incorrect. Relief for Tata Trust. The Income Tax Appellate Tribunal of Mumbai quashes the tax department's order seeking to launch a review of tax exemption granted to 3 Tata Trusts. Says the order is devoid of legal sustainable merit. Adds there was a glaring non-application of mind by the tax department. India's COVID-19 tally sees the lowest single-day increase in 6 months at 16,000. Active cases fall for the 32nd day, slipping below 2.7 lakh. Well, the big COVID-related headline, 6 returnees from the UK have been found to be positive for the new strain of COVID-19 detected in the UK. Now, these travellers have been isolated. The government says it is undertaking an intensive contact tracing exercise. Anu Sharma joins us now with more. Anu, take us through the details of the genome sequencing and what do we now expect in terms of surveillance measures from the government?
The 6 passengers who've arrived from the UK have tested positive for the new strain of COVID-19. Now, we do know that 33,000 passengers arrived from the UK between November 25th and December 23rd, and out of these 114 tested positive for COVID-19, and out of these 114, 6 have tested positive for the new strain of COVID-19, 3 from Bengaluru, 2 from Hyderabad and 1 from Pune. Now, these 6 people have been kept in separate single-room isolation units. Their close contacts have been put under quarantine, and other co-passengers and flight staff, that contact tracing process is ongoing, and simultaneously surveillance has also started for the other people who might have come into contact. Simultaneously, as far as the flight ban is concerned for the flights coming in from the UK into India, today the government indicated that there can be a short-term extension of the flight ban beyond December 31st. But of course, the final decision in that matter is yet to be taken. For now, back to you.
All right, Anu, many thanks for joining us. As Anu was pointing out, this has now been confirmed by the Aviation Minister Hardeep Puri. He says the government is foreseeing a slight extension, in his words, of the suspension of flights from the UK. Remember, earlier this month, the government had announced a ban on flights from Britain till the 31st of December. So he doesn't anticipate it to be a longer suspension, but 31st of December is likely to be extended further. Listen in.
I foresee, now I'm speaking not with a mandate as an announcement, I foresee a slight extension of the temporary suspension because we are getting the fuller picture of what has happened. I don't expect that extension to be a long or indefinite extension. I'm not going to put a figure on it, but the words I'm choosing will give you an idea. A slight extension, small extension of the temporary suspension. Because I also see that flights from the United Kingdom to other countries are similarly suspended for the moment.
Well, that is the Civil Aviation Minister. So expect an extension of the restrictions imposed on flights from and to the UK beyond the 31st of December. But there is no clarity yet on how long it will take for flights to resume. It's time now for us to head into a break. But up next, as part of our ongoing series, ReVine 2020, a special report on the steps taken by the government to help relieve the pressure on COVID and the lockdown-hit economy. An already struggling economy was in for a major kick to the gut when on the 23rd of March, the Prime Minister announced a nationwide lockdown. But what began as a 3-week exercise was quickly extended to a 3-month ordeal, one that has been touted as amongst the strictest lockdowns implemented anywhere in the world. To help relieve the pressure on the economy, the government came up with a slew of relief and stimulus measures. And as part of our ongoing series, ReVine 2020, Sapna Das recounts the key features of the stimulus package that was unveiled over a 7-month period and by the government's calculations was worth nearly 30 lakh crore rupees. Take a look.
It's only 36 hours since the lockdown has been imposed. And therefore now we have come with a package which will immediately take care of the concerns, the welfare concerns of the poor and suffering workers and those who need immediate help.
This was the first of many such press conferences and was aimed at offering support to the poor and the economically super vulnerable. The package on offer included cash transfers worth 31,000 crores into the Jan Dhan accounts of women, the aged and the disabled. And 5 kgs of free rice or wheat and pulses for 3 months to 80 crore beneficiaries. It also involved the government paying EPF contributions for 3 months for a select few and free LPG cylinders to 8 crore poor households.
This Prime Minister Garib Kalyan scheme that we want to come out with is expected to meet a total of 1,70,000 crores.
But by May, the original 3-week lockdown had been extended 3 times. And with India heading into lockdown 4.0, came another stimulus package and another mantra.
Essentially, this is to spur growth and to build a very self-reliant India. And that's where this whole initiative is called as Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan. And the word Atmanirbhar India is the one which you will be hearing me say quite often.
Details emerged over the following 5 days, and by the 17th of May, we had the first Atmanirbhar Bharat package. It was envisaged at 11 lakh crore rupees, and while it included some direct cash support, it was comprised mainly of loans and loan guarantees and headroom for states to borrow more. Mathematically, clubbed with the 8.01 lakh crore rupees of liquidity relief already provided by RBI and the Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana announced in March, the government had announced a 21 lakh crore rupees stimulus package.
The way this is being counted is being given to you accurately. There is a mix of fiscal impulses and liquidity provision, and almost every country in the world counts it this way.
Some of the features of Atmanirbhar Bharat 1.0 included an emergency credit line guarantee scheme for MSMEs and businesses worth 3 lakh crore rupees, an infrastructure fund for agriculture to the tune of 1 lakh crore rupees to be raised by NABARD, liquidity infusion of 90,000 crores for DISCOMs, and a 70,000 crore rupee fund of funds to support MSMEs, and special liquidity schemes and partial credit guarantees for housing finance companies and MFIs worth 75,000 crore rupees. The FM ended the announcements with a hint that more relief may be offered.
So there are enough such money which is going, not adequate, I grant it. Oh, finance minister said enough money is going. No. I'm not saying there's enough given. But yes, we are doing that too.
The relief package also brought with it critical reforms, like ration card portability under One Nation, One Ration Card by March 2021, commercial mining in coal sector with 50 blocks to be offered immediately, and a hike in the FDI cap for defence manufacturing. It also incentivized states to implement reforms with a higher borrowing cap. Many of the clauses in the 3 farm laws that are currently in the eye of the storm were also part of these reform announcements, as was a new public sector enterprise policy that promised to change the landscape of corporate India.
So if a sector is notified, and in that if there are 10 public sector enterprises, either they will be merged together or they will be brought together in such a way that they are only 4 or lesser. So there won't be mushrooming public sector enterprises in those notified strategic sectors.
But by September, the government was looking at an actual cash outgo of less than 1 lakh crore rupees. As per the first supplementary demand for grants, the government provided 40,000 crores for Manrega, 31,000 crores for direct benefit transfer to women Jan Dhan account holders, 2,800 crores to be distributed to the aged and disabled, and 10,000 crore rupees towards food subsidy for the distribution of free grains, among others. In October, to boost festive season demand,
Atmanirbhar Bharat 2.0 offered perks to central government employees to spend more on consumer durables and urged higher capital expenditure by both the centre and the states. And on the 12th of November came Atmanirbhar Bharat 3.0. The government calculated an additional spend of 2.65 lakh crore rupees under the new package, of which production-linked incentive schemes were estimated at 1.46 lakh crores. Without the PLI scheme, additional expenditure stood at 1.19 lakh crores, the lion's share of which went to additional fertilizer subsidy. But this was actually arrears already due. It also comprised 18,000 crores in additional spend towards the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana for urban India. In addition, the government expanded the emergency credit line guarantee scheme to cover 26 stress sectors and extended it till March 31st, 2021. This was to disburse the unused amounts under the original 3 lakh crore rupee allocation. Further, it launched the Atmanirbhar Bharat Rozgar Yojana, under which the government would pay EPF contributions for first-time employees recruited between October 2020 and June 2021 for the next 2 years.
I just give you a quick back of the envelope calculation. You may go back, do your homework and come back to cross-question us. You're welcome. Total of 15% of the GDP is what has been given here as stimulus till today. Total of 15% of the GDP. You may divide that between the government and the RBI. Never mind. Just the government, 9% of the GDP.
In New Delhi, Sapna Das.
Well, with that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of Reporter's Diary. Stay tuned to CNBC TV 18. The news will continue. Thanks for watching.
Brought to you by